All right, so Rick, if we can start today by having you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your professional background.
Sure, Ian. I'm my background. I've been in digital marketing since really kind of the very beginning of digital marketing. I can I can fortunately or unfortunately date myself back to the very beginning, kind of the early dot com days of really 2000 when I was in business school and did a startup during business school with a friend of mine, and at that time search engine marketing was actually directory marketing because our main focus was optimizing the Yahoo and MSN directories at that time. So that was really kind of where my journey really began. And so spent some time doing that. Worked in healthcare for a little while, kind of managing the provider portal for a large healthcare company, and then really kind of got into search engine marketing around 2006 when I went to work for a company called the Search Agency. And then I spent 12 years across two different agencies. And then found myself after agency work moving over to the brand side where I've spent the last, I guess, about 8 years running marketing for some fairly large publicly traded brands, with most recently running marketing for Bed Bath and Beyond and Overstock.com. So that's kind of where I was most recently. And then over the last few months, I've transitioned out of that and kind of working as a fractional CMO over a handful of smaller brands. So kind of trying to go back to some of my earlier roots, helping some of the smaller brands and taking some of the things I've learned from bigger brands and applying them to smaller brands and seeing how I can grow them.
Fantastic, and I think I might only be a year or two behind you in the journey, so I can totally relate to seeing this digital transformation really take multiple shapes over the last couple of decades, and it's like everything else. We never really get any answers. We just keep adapting to the new, to what is new, and figuring out how we're going to play in the space. And so having worked at the intersection of SEO and performance for years now, tell me how you're using AI beyond just call it the table stakes of idea generation or copy generation.
Well, I mean, I really I look at it and I've found it like fascinating and exciting. For me personally, I think I really have felt for the last few years. I mean, I hate to say it, but probably a little bored with search.
Hmm.
I
I know
think,
what you mean.
that really there was no innovation in search. And I was really, feeling probably, I, disappointed in a way with kind of Google that, as they became really kind of, the dominant monopoly that they had become, that there was no innovation in really what they were doing. They made small changes, but nothing drastic. Everybody was really kind of set in what they were doing, and Google was just really only trying to shift more clicks into paid, and had no seemed to have no real interest in changing the experience.
Hmm.
And so I think with, whereas when I look back to the earlier days when I, think from kind of 2006 to, 2006 probably to 2014, call it that kind of, kind of 8 year period of time. It was much more dynamic where, you were going from just a very basic kind of 10 blue links on Google to a much more dynamic page of how they integrated paid listings to getting, getting, Google Shopping, which then became, PLA, and,
Right.
those pieces, the knowledge graph got integrated, and then you really started getting social media kind of as part of the mix, and a lot of, and it became much more dynamic, and then the landscape really changed, and there was a lot of different things that you could do. So it was much more interesting. But then is really all the ad dollars really started to flow into either, either Facebook, which is now Meta, or Google, it just seemed to really kind of stagnate, I would say, over the last few years. So with, with AI really coming in, it really has disrupted it once again, and that's really forced the hand to finally create a new experience, which I think is great. And and so I think for the when I think for the marketer, it's fun. Because I think
Mhm.
it's you can start to go back and think about I can think about the consumer decision journey differently. I can think about now I have different vehicles and different ways that I can get in front of customers at different points in time. And customers are interacting in different ways. You're seeing things more recently where now because of AI that consumers are engaging more, and effectively search types of things, which is leading to growth and actual queries on Google, which hadn't happened for years. So,
Mhm.
the customer is actually, consumer is actually more engaged and more interested than they've been in years. So,
Yeah.
I look at it's
Yeah.
a great thing, you know.
I think, yeah, I totally agree. I think the excitement is back in a way, and I think you said it perfectly. The market felt very stagnant for a while. There was a lack of innovation because it was very much a matured ecosystem.
Yeah,
And now this is a shot in the arm, I think, for everybody to kind of rethink what the consumer experience can be.
yeah.
And once again, the end user is often much savvier than the marketers who are trying to reach them, and they're always a couple of clicks ahead. And so it is forcing all of us to kind of go back to the drawing board and try to reimagine ways to engage and optimize. Um, do you have any examples off the top of your head, not to put you in that corner, in terms of how it influences creative performance or execution? How these emerging tools are kind of affecting that on maybe a more tactical level?
Well, I think, I mean, I see kind of from from a tactical level, I think you have kind of two things that are going on. You have your I think you still have your what I consider your needs based or your more urgent needs based types of queries, and those aren't really changing. So,
Hmm.
when you think of things like local search, if your radiator went out in your car, you need to find a mechanic nearby you quickly. Like
Right.
that isn't going to change. We're still going to go to Google. That experience is going to be the same. If you were out shopping, you're going to do the same, and you're on your phone, you're looking for something. You're not going to fire up ChatGPT and ask 9 prompts to get a whole bunch of different things from an agent. You're not
Hmm.
going to do that. But I think from when we think of, the what used to be, if I was to, like I think when I think to my experience at Bed Bath and Beyond, that if somebody was shopping for patio furniture, that that was a considered purchase that typically somebody would do over several months. That type of purchase now can happen can really happen in days, because you can, instead of where before you had to go and you went to Google and you had to do a lot of research all on your own and click on a lot of things. It took a lot of time. You didn't necessarily have 8 hours all in one session to do all your research to get to a point where now you could then do your price comparison shopping. Now with a chat GPT or a perplexity or whatever your LLM of choice may be, now you can ask your agent, it can go do all that research for you and come back, give you some things, you can read it, and now in a session of 30 minutes you can do everything that you would have taken you 8 hours before, now in a quick period of time. And then you can also follow that up with, now do all my price comparison shopping for me
Yeah.
and give me
Yeah.
all that. And then you can come back to, now, okay, now here's my prices. and then you can just ultimately go, okay, based on, I still may not buy the cheapest one there, but you can still at least go, okay, who do I trust most in that group, and I'm going to
Hmm.
pick that
Hmm.
one. And so now that can happen much faster,
Yep.
where it
Yep.
couldn't happen before. So.
Yeah, and I think that time saved is really, a key ROI indicator in all of this. But I would be curious to kind of maybe branch past the time save piece to any specific lift metrics that really zone in on now with leveraging AI. So whether it's click through rates or CPA or a variant win rate or something like that. I'm curious if you're able to attribute lifts in those more granular metrics to AI, and if so, how do you isolate AI kind of as that variable in the outcome?
So I think the main thing I'm looking at right now more so is brand, and the impact of brand. Because I think from a, I think from a search perspective, it's still a small number. From a total percent of search, or search traffic, it's still relatively small.
Hmm.
It's still only a few percent, so it's not that significant. But all those searches, what that's really leading to is it's leading to an increase in brand related, or kind of, you know, brand plus, or kind of trademark plus type of search traffic.
Hmm. Yep.
So I think that's really where we're seeing, or where I'm seeing a lot of the lift for people right now is that, and the hard part is, I think, from like the, kind of your more SEO, perspective, is there aren't great tools right now to really identify and get a good handle on how much visibility you're really getting, in
Hmm.
those things. I think there's some ways to hack your way through Google Search Console with AI overviews on Google. There's some methodology to do it. It's
Yeah.
messy. It's not
Right.
it's not perfect. There's some expensive enterprise tools that you can get that I think look slick. I don't know how good they really are at the end of the day. So there aren't great ways to kind of look at it and understand your true visibility with it. But you
Hmm.
can really start to see, okay, I'm seeing some decline in my SEO traffic, but I'm not seeing but what you should be seeing is, I'm seeing some decline in my SEO traffic. I'm not seeing a decline in my SEO conversions or revenue. I
Right.
am seeing an increase in my brand traffic. And
Right.
that should be really your kind of healthy indicator, is
Yeah,
what,
that's the barometer. Right.
yeah, that if you've done the right work, and you've got your structured data in the right place, you have good content, you have basic good SEO fundamentals, then you
Hmm.
should be getting the benefit of starting to show up more in those things. And then if you're being more savvy and starting to think like a consumer, and going out and saying, okay, let me perform some of these types of prompts, and see, okay, am I showing up in the consideration set within those if I do those prompts? Then
Hmm.
then are you seeing the corresponding lift in your brand traffic? And that's what I think today, that to me is, where I'm looking and seeing the wins that way.
Hmm. Yeah, no, excellent. I love that. You're talking a lot about brand and the impact of brand visibility in all of this. How do we balance brand safety um, when we're leveraging AI now? Because I think there's a lot of concern about maintaining the guardrails in terms of brand identity and IP and integrity. Now that we are bringing more generative intelligence into the equation.
Good question. Good question. Um, I think there's a lot. I think with what I don't know. I feel like there's a lot with what I see with AI right now that reminds me of the early days of social media.
Hmm.
That when I think back to 2008 to 2010, that there were a lot of these same types of questions and things. And there are, it's easy, in a lot of ways, it's very easy to manipulate. I think, you know, you know, it's very easy to manipulate AI right now.
Hmm.
It's easy to do things, and there's people that can game the system and can get result or get things surfaced
Yep.
in
Yep.
minutes.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. No.
I had a post last week, and I had several people comment, and I challenged people, how quickly were they able to get results? And I had several people tell me that they were able to get results within minutes. So,
Right. Yeah.
so
It's
I
funny.
think,
Like it is. It's easy to manipulate the system. It's also easy to be manipulated by
yeah.
the AI.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so your question on brand, that's one I think we're going to have to, the LLMs really have to, they are not a, they're not a mature algorithm today, like
Right.
Google is,
Right.
or even like the social media platforms are. So it
Yep.
really is going back to, how are they going to create guardrails? Because,
Hmm.
again, it goes back to, if ChatGPT or Perplexity are only a couple percent of, of the ecosystem today, as a if I'm a if I want to go out there and wreak havoc on my competitor, and I don't have a lot of morals about it, then, I probably
Yeah.
could today say, okay, I'm going to go out and do some bad things. So
Yeah.
do we end up with, basically reputation management for AI? And,
Right.
just like we did
Right.
reputation management for SEO, you know,
Right. Exactly.
that was,
Exactly.
that was a real thing for a while, because, some of it was, people do bad things, and they get caught up in they get caught up, and it never goes away. And then
Yep.
it becomes, there has to be a product to solve for it.
Yep.
Um, so
Yeah. I think that in a lot of ways, what is true across the board remains true. I mean, I think most people would agree that AI is fundamentally, one of the most, if not the most powerful tool that has been introduced in recent memory. But ensuring safeguards, building best practices, figuring out how to adapt. Like, we had to do this at the beginning of the digital revolution. We had to do this with search. We had to do this with social. We had to do the same types of
yeah,
processes. And I don't think that that's any different. I don't personally view AI as anything different as far as it being a tool than any other tool that's introduced, and we learn as professionals how to leverage it. Obviously, it's an incredibly powerful one, beyond the typical scope, but I think that everything else sort of remains constant around it. What's interesting, and I'm kind of going to segue into a question here, is because of how wide ranging these tools are now, we're seeing some really unique things take place, and so we surveyed a couple hundred performance marketers over the last couple of months just to get their takes on how things are evolving in their workspaces, and we saw that almost 50% of teams that consider themselves advanced in AI integration are creating AI specific roles within the organization. So new job titles, new descriptions that are really, focused on what you're doing within AI. Are you thinking about team structure differently now?
um, yes. I mean, I don't know. Yes and no. I mean,
Hmm.
I think some are, but it's also, I don't know. I think in some ways yes, but I think in other ways, you have to get your current team to start using it. And
Yep.
I also feel, I don't know, I feel a little bit it's a little cart before the horse. Um,
I can no. I was really surprised that almost half of the team said, we're doing this, because in my mind, I'm thinking if I'm hiring a creative, there's no part of me that wants to put out a JD for an AI fluent creative. You
Oh,
know,
yeah,
it should be table stakes. It should be part of the toolkit that the individual is bringing to the table. But if I lead with what I care about is your fluency in AI, then that signals that I really care less about your fundamental understanding of creative practices in theory and application.
yeah,
And that really worries me. Like you said, putting the cart before the horse. It feels like people are perhaps a little too trusting, too fast, and kind of putting all the chips in. When, like you pointed out, we're still very much in the early days of the algorithm. It's not a matured ecosystem. Things change literally week to week
yeah.
in the way that the tools are emerging. So yeah, we are a little surprised to see that degree of adoption in terms of, yeah, we want, our team to be promoted as AI centric, but I'm not here to rain on people's parades, and everyone has their, certainly their ability to prioritize what they want to. But it is interesting to,
Yeah.
to see. Nobody ever said, I want a, someone who's fluent in Microsoft Outlook first and foremost when it came out. So, yeah, it is interesting. I mean, let me ask you this then: if you had to, gaze into the crystal ball, 12 or 18 months into the future, what do you think will separate, the high performance teams from the others in terms of the AI and adoption and usage?
Well, I mean, I think I mean, people are going to have to embrace it. And at least, I mean, I believe it's going to, it's really people are, I believe where people, at least where it can be extremely powerful is with the workflows,
Mm-hmm.
and embracing it for that. That's something that, when I was at Beyond, we'd actually been using it for probably the last couple of years. And, and we had been using it, and I know that it was a incredible time saver and allowed us to do quite a bit of things because it allowed us not to have to use a bid management tool. We were able to get by with a smaller team because basically we could mimic all the things that like a bid management tool would do, and what would take a team of 5 people we could do with like two.
Right.
And so,
Right.
and we could do that all by just doing negative keyword funneling and and different things like that, and just using AI automation workflows to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of things with that, on the paid search side and also the SEO side. So so I think and I felt like that model, and I think you'll see a lot of those types of things. Like I felt like that was very pragmatic and was a really good thing to introduce into organizations, because that was a lot of the busy work that could save a lot of man hours, and
Yep.
make organizations a lot more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff I feel like is challenging, because I mean I can see it on one hand, like I don't know, the C-suite executive says like, oh, we'll just hire a young person who can write some prompts in AI
Yeah.
and we'll get the
Right.
right thing. And it's like, no, you're not going to get the right thing. The only reason you got the only reason you got the use case that you did that seemed right was because the subject matter expert was the one that put the prompts in and
Yep.
realized something was wrong and went through like 3 iterations till they got the right thing. And so if
Exactly.
you don't
Exactly.
have the subject matter expertise to go through that, then it's just going to be, garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
So
Right.
I think you got to look at, AI is going to be at least over the next, couple years will be a great tool for productivity. And I think in the subject matter expertise, same thing,
Mm-hmm.
that a subject matter expert, whether you're, a coder, whether you're an analyst, maybe even a creative, a content writer, like you can use the AI to do 80 to 90% of the work. And then because you're the subject matter expert, then you can finish it and fine tune it and make it really
Yes.
good. But
Yep.
then we're going to have to figure out, I don't know when AI is going to be so good that the entry level worker that doesn't have
Mm-hmm.
the subject matter expertise could just
Mm-hmm.
blindly say things, and the AI is going to produce the decades worth of experience level,
Right.
you know,
Right.
information out
Right. I mean, will
as
it
the end
really be good
product.
enough to
So
parse it? Yeah, it's we're gonna find out one way or another.
yeah.
Yeah, what it's capable of. Well, let me let me kind of end in the core of what I wanted to ask on that note, because I thought that was some excellent insight. But let me actually flip it a little just to kind of get your hot take. So if you lost every AI tool tomorrow, what number one, what would break first in the process? Like, where would you really, feel like you're at a loss? And then what would actually get better?
Uh, I don't know. Probably my loss would I'd have the thing I'd freak on would be writing, probably would be the first
Okay.
thing that
Uh-huh.
I'd have to relearn how to write. So, I've become far too dependent on using AI to get that rough draft and then fine tuning it. So
Yeah. Yep.
I think I that's become too easy for me.
Yep.
On the flip side of that,
Interesting.
that would probably be the same thing that I would get much better at. So I,
Yeah.
I was good at it before. I've gotten lazy by using AI. It's still always my ideas. AI just helps me because then I only have to think about the idea and what I want to get
Mm-hmm.
out of it.
Yeah.
I don't have to go through I don't have to go through any of that, writer's block or anything like that
Yeah.
of how to start. I can go, here's the idea, and it puts it together, and then I can finish it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd have to go back to doing that. I'd just be slower. So, but it would probably end up better. So,
Well, and maybe we would just have more time to do the things that we're asked to do as marketers as a result, instead of now, it seems like the timelines get more and more and more truncated because of the belief that we can get 90% of the way there, 8 times faster, and so, the value equation shifts. And yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, the other thing I would ask is from your vantage point, what's the most overrated narrative, in about AI in marketing right now that you wish people would just shut up about?
the most overrated narrative. Um, I don't know. I would probably say creative. I think I would say creative. I think that's the one that everybody says. I think there's a notion that AI is going to take over creative, and um, but I think creative comes from people because people really have people have creative ideas, and they understand what's going to connect with people, and what's going to move them, and AI can never really do that. And so even if what comes out of AI might do that, it's only because a human told AI very specifically what to make. And so I think we got to not lose the point that it's the human behind the creative. It's not AI just spitting out great creative.
As a career creative, I really appreciate that. um, because I do think that our discipline is under siege a little bit, and I think, creative is one of those really interesting disciplines where those who are not creative, quote unquote, often fancy themselves. And so, since everybody knows how to write words and speaks English, everybody thinks they can be a copywriter.
Yep.
And that's always been the case. And, even before AI. And now, like you said, writer's block is a thing of the past. And someone can put a half thought prompt into the system and get something that sounds good to them and seems like it's going to check the box. But again, like we were saying earlier, is it really is it really speaking to what the result is trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And without that kind of indefinable human quality, are you really being creative? And this is going to get way out of my comfort zone, and I should really bring a philosopher into the conversation to help define, well, what is creativity and what is human, and like all these bigger questions that start bubbling up to the surface now. But it's such a ripe area for exploration.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of creatives are scared right now because a lot of the people that hold the purse strings are making decisions that say, well, we don't necessarily need to have great creatives. We can have mediocre creative that's good enough, and we can get by. And I think that we're kind of in that period right now, where at least I don't want to speak for your feed, but my LinkedIn feed is just saturated with what is very obviously AI generated posts and imagery, and it's sort of become the norm. And I think that it's been like that for a little while, and I think we're going to be in that space for a little while. And then my hope is that you kind of see a little bit of a return to center, where we realize we've been inundated with this sea of mediocrity, and if everybody is pushing it out, then nobody is standing apart. And I like to talk with a lot of my creative peers, about well, what does that mean? What are companies going to have to do then? They're going to have to call their agency. That's the trope that we always go back to. We're going to have to call those individuals and those organizations that we used to rely on for fresh ideas and new takes, and teams of people that are willing to tell us things we don't want to hear, which the AI is not going to do. It's one of the most sycophantic tools I've ever come across. It's really hard to get it to pressure test things, accurately,
Yeah.
and sincerely, and that's the value of creative. I think in all of this is in its ability to cut through the expectations that people have, and to subvert those expectations and to help brands really set themselves apart, and drive novel consumer experiences. And I think that's what we're doing at Live Street. I know that that's what you and your teams have been endeavoring to always do. So I think we're going to muddy through this AI era together. And if nothing else, I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, Rick, before we sign off, was there anything that you didn't get a chance to talk about that you would like to kind of add to the conversation here?
So I think the one thing I would add, it's a segue on what you're saying about creative, because I think as we've talked about AI, and this is to go back to talking about as people start moving more towards prompts and and getting results through AI and things like that, then one of the things that I think will that's going to become it's kind of here, but becomes a bigger thing is that now still when those prompts come back, there's still not going to be like one choice. There's going to be multiple choices within that. And so there does become like creative becomes very important because creative, you have to start talking to the consumer outside of AI and go back to, how do I talk to the consumer in connected TV, out of home, and other things where, to your point, it can't be an AI driven piece. It has to be something that talks to a person that really tells the product value and connects with them in a way that, that feels more authentic, and they're drawn more to the brand and the product, so that then when they get those choices from the AI, they say that's the one I want. I trust it. I believe in that brand and those things. And that's, AI is going to deliver you a whole bunch of things. It's going to say, oh, these are the three that I picked for you. But it's your brand messaging and your brand story that you tell over here that's going to differentiate you from those three results that it shows you.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
you're going to need that.
Yep. Yeah. And a little bit of luck too.
And some luck. Well, it's going to take some skill to be in those three. So,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Rick. Well, I think that'll wrap us here today. Thank you. This has been fantastic. Really appreciate you coming on and
you
being a
bet.
part of this with us.
You bet. I always enjoy these
And
conversations.
yeah, and I would, if you don't mind, I'd love to follow up with you, in a number of months and just see kind of how some of those campaigns are performing for you and just kind of bend your ear on what you're learning from them.
You bet.